Well, hello everyone and welcome to a brand new landscape photography vlog. Right in front of me, I've got some fall color, and then all around this park that I'm in are various waterfalls. So I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and I thought what would be fun for this video specifically is kind of look a little deeper into the landscape and see if we can create some simplicity and minimalism out of some of these more chaotic scenes. I got my Sony A1 out with my 28 to 200 millimeter lens because I really enjoy the versatility of being able to go from a fairly wide perspective to a telephoto perspective at 200. Look at these gorgeous maple trees. They're so nice with some of that yellow foliage, especially up here. If you can start to zoom in, focus on just some of the organic shapes that are coming out from the trunk with sprinkles of fall color in there. And then, of course, if you want to, you can get even closer. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch my f-stop over to f16. This is going to allow me to get more of the shot in focus. Now, a lot of what I'm shooting is closer to infinity, but the bigger my f-stop, the greater I make it, the more chances I'm going to, cut through that focus and be able to focus on some of the trees in the foreground and some of the ones in the background. So I'm going to do f16 here. ISO 100 just to get a nice clean frame, and then I'm going to do a slight long exposure, and I'm really going to prioritize all of that highlight detail. So my slight long exposure puts me at about 1/5 of a second here. It's not too bad.
Alright, so here's my first shots of those gnarled trees with those gorgeous splashes of fall color. I decided to exclude the sky out of the frame to keep a darker background, which allowed the branches to stand out and keep the images more simple visually. After shooting these, I noticed some mist lifting to my right side, so I aimed my camera in that direction and then I captured this. I love how the branches in this photograph almost resemble hands reaching out, and the mist in the background helped to add more atmosphere and interest to the scene. Again, for this one I'm using the same principles as the last shot, with an aperture of f16 to get everything nice and in focus, ISO 100, and a 0.6 of a second exposure.
All right, so as we walk around this bend, check this out. Ooh, look at that waterfall. Beautiful. I'm going to see if I can get closer to it, see if we can compose some interesting photographs. Let me show you how this is looking. And I switched over to my 100 to 400 lens to see if I could get a little closer to some of those water ribbons. So as you can see here, this is at about 100 millimeters. And what I really like in here is if I kind of zoom in on this right side, do you see in there right behind the main falls where the water's trickling down the rocks? That's what I really like. And I think I can do a long exposure preview in here for you. Let's see what that looks like if I slow down my shutter. Yeah, and look at that. So cool. So I'm kind of playing around with this section over here, and then I also see a section to the left side. Look at that. So kind of fun. That's what I'm the most interested right now in, because, if I show you a wide angle of this waterfall, let me turn the camera around. I'm just not quite as interested in the way this looks. I mean, it's beautiful, but, there's not very many creative ways to compose this right now. So I'm a lot more interested in using the telephoto lens to get more of that abstraction and that minimalism out of the shot. So I'm going to try and zoom in here, about 400 millimeters. I'm going to do f16. I'm going to go to ISO 100, and then I'm going to do a slight long exposure here. I don't need much. The water's moving very fast, so even like 1/3 of a second should give me all the motion I need here. And it's interesting, every second that the water shifts its position, it creates different shapes. So I want to consider that and maybe take multiple exposures here. So I have a timer mode on right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip to a timer mode that takes multiple exposures. So what it's going to do is it's going to be a 2-second timer that takes a burst of 5 images, one after the other.
So for these waterfall shots, I decided to go for a very simple dark black and white treatment, and I loved the ethereal, dreamy look that it gave to these images. These were a lot of fun to capture, but I found some more intriguing ways to use this technique at some later waterfalls.
This place is just so cool. As you can see, we're gonna walk right behind the waterfall. Woo! Nice and misty. Nothing like a little water to cheer you up, you know?
When I'm out there in field capturing waterfalls, I love to play around with different shutter speeds. So I thought it might be fun to raise my ISO and shutter speed way higher to freeze the water droplets in midair. And here's how it turned out. After this, it got pretty dark and started pouring rain, and so I decided to pack it in for the day. Although I did manage to pull out my camera one more time on my way home and capture these foggy tree images with my 100-400 lens. The next day I repacked my bag and headed out for another adventure, and this one ended up giving me some pretty surprising results.
It's another day here in the Pacific Northwest, exploring more waterfalls and more woodland forest scenes. Check out all these just gorgeous mossy trees, gnarled branches. And if you kind of aim in with the 100-400 lens, you can really isolate some of these shapes and patterns.
So this ended up being my favorite forest image of the video. The sun peeked out for just enough time to backlight these beautiful branches, and I loved the warm colors that shine through here. It's amazing how just a little bit of light can completely change what a scene looks like.
So here's something kind of new. This is the Laowa 85mm, and it's an extreme macro lens. I bought it a while ago, but just have not had the time to really explore with it. So I figured it's kind of the perfect setting to maybe try and find some macro leaves to photograph, or even mushrooms. So I think I'm gonna look around here and see what kind of things we can find. The only downside to using a macro lens like this is it's really hard to get light into the lens because you have to use a super high aperture to get everything in focus. I think there'll be some really cool textures to play with here.
Sure enough, I found some cool mushrooms to play with, and here's some of my first images with my new lens. The most challenging part about using a macro lens is how thin the plane of focus is. To get this section of mushrooms fairly in focus, I needed to use a very large aperture, which required doing an 8-second exposure just to get enough light in there. Later on, I did play around with artificial lighting on some gorgeous leaves, and I plan on releasing a full macro video of that adventure, so stay tuned. But in the meantime, here's a sneak peek with a couple of shots that I took.
Ooh, look at this. Getting a little closer to the waterfall here. That is pretty cool. We're getting a much better perspective from this side than we were from the other side over there. All right, I think this angle right here is perfect for the waterfall. So I'm gonna take out the 100-400 lens and let's see what we can do here. Yeah, that is so cool. I'm excited for this. Okay, so let me show you what a slight long exposure will look like here too. Let's just kind of drag the shutter speed. Look at that. Even just in the visual preview, it's incredible. Let's try and zoom in to the right side here with these pebbles that are catching the water. Wow, that's going to be so awesome. Enough talking about it. For my settings here, I'm going to stick with ISO 100. I'm going to do that slight long exposure. Maybe like 1/3 of a second should be enough. And then I think I'm going to go with like f11 here because everything's out at about infinity, so it should be perfect for f11. I'm just going to focus on the rocks next to the falls real quick. I'm going to try a couple different angles here, maybe some verticals. It's always good to play around, capture a variation of different scenes, especially because if you have this kind of flat overcast lighting, you're not in a rush. You have so much time to play around. Like, there's no rush. So try and find, you know, all the different options that are possible.
It was a ton of fun capturing these black and white shots of the falls, similar to what I did on the previous day. I loved this image specifically with these smaller cascades and then the streaming water going vertically through the frame that almost appears like light beams raining down.
All right, well, I just tried using my wide angle lens, my 12 to 24 lens. I kind of kept the lens pretty much covered with this yellow cloth, just kind of wiping it off after every shot. But man, that was intense. I was getting so much spray every single image. It was one of those things where I was just trying to like move around, see if I could get a couple different angles, but like I really have no clue how any of those turned out. I'm gonna have to wait until we get back to the computer to see how any of these wide angles turned out. But it was a lot of fun to take. It was like taking a nice brisk shower, let's say. But I'm just gonna wipe off my camera a little bit more with this cloth, and yeah, see if we can find anything else.
It was nice to pull out the wide-angle lens and try something a little bit different for this one. I love how the waterfall frames the right and bottom side with those gnarled, mossy trees catching mist in the background. As mentioned, these were extremely tough to capture and I got completely soaked. So for this one, I kept it very simple, and I'm actually shooting a slight long exposure handheld with lens stabilization and in-camera stabilization. And I think for a frantic shoot, this one came out pretty nice. Okay, so I did shoot one more waterfall afterwards, and these turned out to be my absolute favorite images of the day. It's amazing the opportunities you can create for yourself when you think outside the box and open your mind to all the different creative possibilities a place has to offer. Planning shots can be fun, but all of these were captured simply by exploring and observing spontaneous moments. Some were taken more slowly, like the waterfalls with nice soft light, experimenting with different angles and lenses, and others were reactive, like catching the sun peeking out for just a moment to capture those branches, or the fleeting mist amongst the trees. For these two outings, I was out shooting for about 5 hours each time, and as I always say, the more time you spend out there exploring, the more opportunities you give yourself to take great photographs. With that, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more. If you want to learn more from me, you can check out my workshop page where I have various group trips next year, or you can schedule your own private workshop. As always, I really appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.